The Hard Rock Empire is on the air. We are back with another week of podcasting excellence here on the Hard Rock Empire. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. It is the music of March the 20th that we will be talking about this week. Happy to be bringing it to you. Another good week in music that we will break down. Of course, we will also head into the vault, where Mike and I will bring you a couple of classic albums that you should check out as well. Really good stuff once again this week on the Hard Rock Empire. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you're joining us live or on the VOD. Joining me in studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It's going. Another solid week. I'm all for weeks like this when I'm not struggling to find something that's worth my time listening-wise. A couple decent major releases came out this week as well. I also got a re-release to talk about, but I saw next week's list. It's currently over 100 new releases. So it looks like we're starting to ramp up even more than we have up to this point. So that's exciting as well.
It is very exciting. So we'll see how that turns out. Hopefully there'll be some good stuff on the list for next week. I'm sure there will be. It does bring up a good point, and I've just pinned the link to our Discord in both of the chats on YouTube and on Twitch. And it's a good time to mention about the fact that we will have a couple of scheduling changes over the next few weeks. Next weekend is WrestleMania weekend, so we will almost certainly be doing the podcast on Sunday, but it'll probably be earlier in the day on Sunday. So, check out our Discord, and we'll let you know when time wise. It'll probably be in the afternoon. I would say 2:00 Eastern potentially. So for our EU fans over in Europe, it would be probably a better time on Sunday than typically our middle of the night podcast that you might have to deal with right now. So definitely looking forward to that. So we'll join the Discord. We'll let you know when we're going to be podcasting next week. In a couple of weeks, we'll have another Sunday that we'll need to move some stuff around potentially. So, but for the most part, we'll be here at this time. As always, we bring you the new music as we always do. And it is a good time to get to the new music for this week, and I will be pasting the playlist that Mike puts together in both of the chats. And, of course, if you're new to the program, just a reminder of how this all works. Each and every week, Mike will go through a couple different sources, and he will pull a list of the new releases for a given date. The given date this week is March the 20th, and then he will go through and kind of curate the list to kind of the things that we would be interested in checking out. Puts it in the YouTube playlist. We check it out. We pick two bands to spotlight on the podcast. And then, of course, there are some other bands that Mike will mention, maybe re-releases. It may be big label bands. It could be just bands with funny names or just things that Mike might find interesting that he thinks the listeners will find interesting. So we go through those as well before we get to the two that we pick. And another really solid week, I thought. Some good stuff on there. Not a huge list this week, but I felt like there was a little bit of everything for all the different listeners. So I thought it was really good. So again, as I say every week, it's my plug. Check out the YouTube playlist because your taste in music may slightly differ from ours. So it's a good chance to check out some new bands you might not be aware of that are just bands that we enjoyed, but maybe not enough to spotlight them on the podcast this week. So before we get to our new picks, Mike, it's time to go through your hodgepodge, if you will, of various other mentions from the playlist this week.
Yeah, so this was kind of interesting. The newest album from Axel Rudy Pell came out, Ghost Town. I did a little digging because, I'm familiar with Axel Rudy Pell. I've heard a few of his albums, but I didn't know a lot beyond that, and it's kind of wild. First off, I'd forgotten that Ferdy Dornberg plays keyboards for Axel Rudy Pell. He has since 1998. He was kind of he was the keyboardist and eventual guitarist and singer for the band Rough Silk.
Oh, okay.
Who probably a lot of people don't know about because they were never really noteworthy necessarily, but had a couple really good albums in the mid-90s. If you get a chance, check out 1997's Mephisto by that band. Really great album. But weird parallels between Axel Rudy Pell and Yngwie Malmsteen beyond just both being virtuosic guitar players. So Axel Rudy Pell, before joining or starting a solo band, was the guitarist for the German band Steeler. Not to be confused with the American band Steeler that Yngwie Malmsteen played for a couple years before his solo project started. Both guitarists have also at some point had Jeff Scott Soto as their lead singer.
Of course.
Just kind of weird. Like, the odds that both would have been in a band called Steeler, not the same band, sharing lead singers. I mean, Jeff Scott Soto is a legend and great vocalist, so that part may not be as surprising. If you ever want to check out Axl Rudy Pell, though, I would check out his 1996 album, Black Moon Pyramid. It has Jeff Scott Soto on vocals. Some really good songs, Full, Hole in the Sky, You and I, Black Moon Pyramid. Really good stuff, but his newest one, Ghost Town, came out on the 20th, so check that out as well.
Yeah, I thought what I've heard off of that has been solid. So
all this stuff is always, at worst, solid.
Yeah, so it's one I need to go back and finish up, but I definitely think it deserved honorable mention this week, and even just kind of learn a little bit more about a guy who's just a legend in the music business.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of legends, Bay Area thrash legends Exodus had a new album come out on the 20th. Their 13th studio album, Goliath. I got a chance to see them last year at Sonic Temple, and they put on a really good set, really great band. Any Bay Area thrash band's probably going to be a sure thing, so check that out. And finally, the 6th studio album from the AOR hard rock band from New York, Taiketo. Their album Closer to the Sun came out. Probably more known for their song Forever Young from back in the day. Really good sound. They're always solid as well.
That's one I need to go back and finish up as well, but what I've heard off of that is good as well. Those guys are always really solid. So, yeah, honestly, there was a handful of things that were kind of safe fallback picks.
Yeah.
If we didn't find something that was maybe either new or something that maybe flew under the radar a little bit more, we could have easily went with those picks, and I think I'd been pretty happy with that.
Yeah, for sure. A couple of the lesser-known new releases that I did get a chance to listen to that I think are worth probably checking out. Evermore released their newest album, Mournbraid. They're a Swedish power metal band. Give that a listen. Flat Wounds, alternative rock band from New York, released an EP, Chain of Command. That was good as well.
Mm-hmm.
And also Stone Trip. They're an Australian hard rock band. I thought their EP was solid too. So just some other things to check out. As far as re-releases go, they did release the legendary edition of the first Aerosmith album. I didn't do a whole lot of research into that one, but I haven't had a chance to ever listen to that, to be honest. I know a couple of the tracks just because they're big tracks, but that's one I should probably get around to at some point, just because as far as American rock bands go, like Aerosmith is definitely one of the pinnacle bands.
Yeah, no question. And we've talked about it on the podcast, so I won't belabor the point, but I do feel like they're another band that I don't really know their early stuff very well outside of the mega hits from the 70s. So
yeah,
I think going back and giving those early albums a listen would be good, especially in my more refined music taste, maybe in my older age than I would have had 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Dream On, Mama Ken, Walking the Dog, like songs I'm familiar with, but yeah, I definitely think I need to give that a listen, and probably their whole catalog, because again, like a lot of people my age, to me, that late 80s into 90s Aerosmith's kind of the one you know, so got a lot of homework to do to catch up on that band.
That Big Ones album was
one of the best greatest hits compilations
of all time.
Oh man, tremendous.
Of any band.
Yeah.
Any interesting names this week?
Yeah, we did have a few actually. We had the newest from the band Chalice of Suffering. The Raven Cries One Last Time. They are a funeral doom metal band from Minnesota, which, seems depressing already. So
sure.
Worth checking out. I don't know. I haven't listened to it. We had the newest from Engorgement. They Rot Beneath Our Floor. They are a British slam brutal death metal band.
Ooh.
Next, we got Goat Smoker. Their newest Eris, which based on the track and the play on the track list of the album must stand for Entropy Reigns in Silence.
Oh.
But Goat Smoker, Danish stoner doom metal band. And finally, another one from the UK, a post-hardcore band. They are McCluskey, and their newest EP is I Sure Am Getting Sick of This Bowling Alley.
What?
Yeah.
I was going to make a car joke because there's McCluskey Chevrolet, but not the car people. These are the bowling alley people.
Yeah, I sure am getting sick of this bowling alley.
I kind of want to just listen to that. The rest, there are some of the other ones, and unfortunately, a lot of the bands that have the really funny names are the ones that I know are playing music I don't want any part of listening to.
Yeah, not necessarily for me.
But that one maybe. Like, I don't know. I might
Post-hardcore isn't necessarily a red flag. Like, there are some good post-hardcore bands.
Yeah, that's a interesting list of names this week. So
yeah, that one definitely stuck out.
Anything else noteworthy before we jump to the new picks?
That's about it, I think.
So let's get into the new picks for this week then. Of course, we each pick one band to spotlight. And again, I really thought the music was good this week, and there were several picks and even a few obvious picks that we could have jumped on board. But I think we've each settled on a band and an album that maybe have flown under your radar, one of which I think a little bit on the newer side, and the other one has been around for quite a while, as it seems to happen on this podcast. But it is time to get things started with Mike's pick for this week for March the 20th. Mike, what do you got for us?
Yeah, I was double-checking really quick. There's a channel on YouTube that will post full albums from just bands that kind of fall under that new wave of traditional heavy metal moniker. So whenever I see that whenever I pull up that channel and I see albums that pop up on it, I think chances are that might be something I would be into. Like, I feel like this one for this week was on there, but I'm not seeing it right off the top of the bat. But it's definitely one that belongs there as far as just imagery and for the most part sound. This is the debut full-length album from an Oregon-based hard rock band. They are Stainless, and that album is called Lady of Lust and Steel.
I had to go back and pull the censored artwork for this album because
there are two covers of this album.
There are, and the censored one you see on your screen. And if you want to see the uncensored one, you just need to look up the album because it's pretty easy to find, as I realized that is the first one I came across. But anyway, I got to listen to this album today. I really dug it. Tell us about it.
Yeah, it's the censor is obvious. The snake is just in a different position.
Yes.
I thought that was funny too because on YouTube Music they had the censored one, and as I was like reading about the band, I see on their Bandcamp and on Metal Archives like the uncensored one. I'm like, wait a minute, there's a difference here. What's going on? This band formed in 2022. The album lineup includes Jamie Byram on guitars, drums, and vocals, and Larissa Cavasisi on vocals. Also included additional guitars by Eric Wallace and additional vocals by Vi Campbell and Clifton Martin on bass. Currently, the band includes Byram, Cavasisi, Wallace, along with Selena Cleary on bass and Charlie Corrin on drums. Gotta have people to tour. Poor Jamie Byram can't do everything live. The review for this album on the NWTHM website mentions that the band has stated that they don't believe themselves to be a true heavy metal band. And I get it. I think metal as a label can be kind of limiting, especially like in this band's case, because they come out with a sound it's a throwback sound, but their Bandcamp refers to it as a mix of the best attributes of heavy metal, hard rock, and AOR. If you fly the tag of, hey, we're a traditional metal band, we're true heavy metal, I think it limits your ability for future experimentation. And I think it may also even limit the people that will jump into your sound right now. Mm-hmm. I think there is an audience for that kind of music, but if you're just, hey, we're rock, then that's an invitation for everybody, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Obviously, this being their first album, I'm curious to see if you're not metal, where do you go from here? Because, I mean, there is some hard rock. I feel like 70s rock is definitely an influence on these guys, as well as like kind of 80s sleaze rock. I feel both sounds are represented pretty well with these guys. Larissa's vocals feel unique among the other modern bands with a classic sound, and Jamie's guitar work also stands out. There's no shortage of cool hooks and riffs to this. Standout tracks include Restless and Ready, Hoarfrost, Dangers in the Night, Vitamin T's, and the track that I picked to listen to, Don't Cross Me Fool.
Check these guys out. This is Stainless with Lady of Lust and Steel. This is the third track off of that album, Don't Cross Me Fool, and Don't Cross Me is in parentheses. We'll check this out now.
Don't cross me, fool.
Yeah, they couldn't find a spot to kind of dump out of there. It was it's got a little bit of a bluesy sound to it too, which I think is that 70s influence. So much of the 70s classic rock sound has kind of roots in blues music. Probably kind of a natural progression from the 60s. And you hear that there. But yeah, it has some AOR elements. It has some classic rock elements. It's got a little bit of modern rock elements as well. The vocals are definitely, they're not clean, but they're not harsh. They're kind of something in the middle. I feel like both bands that we're going to talk about have a little bit of that going on. It gives it a little bit of an edge to it that kind of adds to the metal flavor of the band, but it's definitely different, and I enjoyed that. And it was different kind of all the way through, which it kind of changed directions a few times, which to me, like when we're listening to these albums and going through so many, if you can make it different and I can get through the whole album and I'm never bored with your sound, I think that's a really big selling point.
Yeah, for sure. It never felt like from one track to the next they were just retreading on territory they had just covered. In a way, it kind of feels like the albums that some of the big metal bands of the 80s released before they realized they were metal. It's kind of that transitional sound. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to hear what they do next. I mean, you're not a metal band, so the world's your oyster. You can play whatever you want.
Yeah, I think that makes it interesting, and I do think it gives them a lot of different directions to go. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see where this all takes them with their next album, but definitely enjoyed it, and definitely encourage you to check those guys out. Stainless, Mike's pick for this week. As always, I have a pick as well, and this is a band, as has happened to us so many times on this podcast, where we come across a band that has been around forever, and we didn't really know about them until they kind of came across, or at least I didn't know about them. I can't speak for Mike, but this is a German progressive power metal band, and this is Assignment with The End Comes Silence is the album. These guys were founded in 1994. This is their sixth full-length album, but the first since 2020's Reflections. Their demo tapes were actually death/thrash metal, but then they evolved into a progressive power metal band over the years. The band is Diego Valdez on vocals, Goran Panic on guitars, Heiko Sparman on bass, and Michael Kolar on drums. They definitely have found a way to balance the progressive and power metal influences with different songs kind of bringing different sounds. Metal Temple's review said, musically this is sandwiched somewhere between subtle melodic metal and pure unadulterated heavy metal. You'll hear the band bouncing from one to the other and back with great ease. That review also went on to really compliment Diego Valdez's vocals, saying, I have to mention singer Diego Valdez. I don't know how I missed his voice before, but he reminds me of two greats in the world of rock and metal. He has a bit of Michael Sweet from Stryper when he sings low-key, but also has some Ronnie James Dio in him, especially when he gets more intense when the gravel enters his vocal cords, which we're going to hear in the sample that I'm going to play. I think that's a pretty good comparison. I mean, it's hard to compare anybody to legends because that always kind of opens them up for criticism, but I think there's some tones there of those two that you do find throughout the album. This album was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. The progressive stuff was noticeable, but you didn't get bogged down in it. That's always the danger with progressive rock and metal. We've talked about it many times on the podcast. Sometimes it just becomes a band showing off what they can do instead of them actually making good music, and I feel like they never crossed over that line. They showed off what they could do without kind of bogging it down. Vocals were great. Music was great. I thought it was a lot of fun to listen to. Definitely interesting going back and checking out their earlier stuff, but excited to find these guys who have been around since 1994. Standout tracks include Nothing to Say, Selling My Soul, Angel of Berlin, and the song we're going to listen to on the podcast is Fallen. This is Assignment, and the new album is With the End Comes Silence. This is the opening track on that album. It's Fallen. Let's listen to a little bit of that now.
Flying
Yeah, I just really dug this one. I thought it was, the vocals had a little bit of an edge to it. It wasn't your like really clean, polished AOR type vocals, and I think that added something to this. So, really enjoyed this one from Assignment. Definitely encourage you to check that out. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you can do worse than being compared to Michael Sweet and Ronnie James Dio for one. Yeah, I really like this stuff, and I think it's funny when you mentioned them changing their sound. When you look at their discography, their first full-length album is called Progressive Changes. I don't know if that was them signaling their change in direction, but if not, it's just a clever title regardless, I guess. But yeah, just solid music.
Yeah, really enjoyed those guys. Definitely encourage you to check those guys out. So those are our new picks for this week. If you are watching on Twitch, we ask that you please stick around if you're not subscribed. Of course, you can always use your Amazon Prime once a month to subscribe for free. Otherwise, if you don't mind, please stick around. We're going to run 90 seconds of ads. Twitch makes us run ads at least once during the program. It does help us. It does make a little bit of money for us. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. If you're on YouTube or you are subscribed, you're going to hear us ramble for about 90 seconds, and then we will get back to the music. So hang around. You won't miss a thing. We'll come back with the vault and talk about a couple of classic albums you need to check out. So we will do that on the other side of this break. For those of you who are on Twitch, you are going to get ads. And we will wait till the ads start, and they are underway. Again, next week, we will probably push the podcast up in the afternoon. That's good news if you're in the EU or maybe in the Far East. Probably it'll be around 2-ish. I will let you all know on social media and in the chat. But WrestleMania, of course, next weekend. We haven't been doing our wrestling podcast. Would like to get back to that, although right now I'll admit that maybe I'm not as engaged in the wrestling product as I have been.
No shortage of things to talk about.
It would certainly be plenty of podcast material. I don't know if it feels like the kind of podcast that would lead to videos that you put on YouTube with like dude with shocked face, like this is the worst thing ever.
I get those recommendations all the time.
Yeah. It's the game that YouTube plays.
TKO has ruined WWE.
Yeah, it's that. But if you write a video like, "Well, here are my opinions about this," then it gets like one view. If you do shocked face and make a clickbaity title,
gotta be as sensational as humanly possible.
Brandon putting in the chat, it's ridiculous on YouTube. It is 100%, but it's they're told that by YouTube, like, hey, you have to do this, or we're not going to promote your videos. So, and it's bad, and we've run into it where there are people we subscribe to. There are people I watch their video every week, and sometimes it just drops off my recommended, and it's like where I'll see it once, and then like I don't click on it, and then it like disappears. It's like, I watch this creator. Why are you getting rid of their video? It's just a mess. Half naked chick as well. Yeah, and it's like it's the game is difficult to play, and they really, as soon as you think you figured it out, they change the rules on you. And so we would like to do more YouTube content. We probably will in the future, but hopefully we can do it without resorting to shock titles. But as someone who writes content for a living, unfortunately, that's the game that Google plays as well with online content. So anyway, there's my TED Talk for today about content. If you're back with us on Twitch, welcome back. We are here getting ready to go into the vault where Mike and I will talk about classic albums you need to check out. Mike and I are both running two different gimmicks. We'll talk about my gimmicks in a moment. Last week, Mike has continued on going through the years, spotlighting some big albums, just albums that are either maybe some bands' first albums or very influential albums or things that he wants to spotlight. It's been really entertaining so far. Just gotten a chance to hear some really great classic rock albums from the early 70s. He'll get back to that next week. Every other week, Mike has been going through the stages and the days at Sonic Temple, which is coming up just a few weeks, believe it or not, and trying to just spotlight one of the bands that's going to be on the stages. And there were a couple stages that we had to get kind of skip through just because there would not have been time to get to every stage. Plus, there are some stages, admittedly, that maybe the music didn't really line up to something Mike wanted to listen to. So with that said, we are continuing on with that. And this is not a band that I'm familiar with, but I'm definitely interested to hear a little bit more about them. So what do you have for the vault this week?
No, I would put myself in that same camp. They were not a band that had been on my radar previously. And that was part of it. When I looked at Sunday Stage 3, I saw the list of bands, and there were a few that I was familiar with to some degree. But I kind of want to use these vaults, both this gimmick and the one going through the years, to give me the opportunity to get familiar with new bands that I haven't listened to, or old bands that I haven't listened to, big albums, whatever.
Yep.
And that's kind of what I did today. Stage 3 on Sunday is very metalcore centric, which may or may not be a good thing depending on your tastes. Bands that are include Conquer Divide from Michigan. They're a metalcore band. Thornhill from Australia, alternative metal, new metal, progressive gent. Throne from Sweden. They are also metalcore and new metal and beatdown hardcore.
Oh.
Yeah. Bloodywood, who I was familiar with from India. They're kind of a new metal, kind of folk metal, rap metal, all sorts of fun sounds. They're an interesting band. Polaris from Australia, metalcore. They listed also as progressive metalcore. Then finally, We Came as Romans from Michigan. They're also metalcore, post-hardcore. And the headliners are Electric Callboy from Germany. Electronicore, post-hardcore. I'm familiar with them for sure.
Didn't they do something with baby metal recently?
They just did, yeah. Like,
that's the only reason I know them.
Yeah. I remember seeing that on YouTube. I don't know if I listened to it, but I know the name, so there's that. Going through that list, I noticed Polaris, Australian band. The tag progressive metalcore really got my attention. It's like, okay, this might be something I want to give a listen to. And ultimately, that's what I did. I went with their third studio album, came out September 1st, 2023. It is Fatalism.
Yeah, I don't know this band at all. Like, when you sent me the link, I'm like, I don't know who these people. Like, is this someone local to Columbus? Their name is Polaris. Maybe it's just a local band.
They're either named after Rust in Peace Polaris from Megadeth or the Amphitheater, maybe. I don't know. I guess not, being from Australia. Band originally formed back in 2012 when drummer Daniel Fernari and guitarist Jake Steinhauser met at their high school Battle of the Bands. By late 2013, early 2014, their lineup would solidify, featuring Jamie Hales on unclean vocals and percussion, Rick Schneider on guitar, Jake Steinhauser on clean vocals and bass, Daniel Fernari on drums, and Ryan Siu on lead guitar. Bands that haven't been around that long, and I kind of consider 2012 as not being around all that long, even though that's 14 years. I didn't expect there to be a whole lot of story here compared to I'm reviewing an album from 1971. But no, there's definitely more here than I was expecting. The band got critical acclaim pretty quickly, nominated for Best Hard Rock / Heavy Metal Album in both 2018 and 2020 by the Australian Recording Industry Association. By November 2022, they entered the studio to begin work on their third album, Fatalism. That album was set to be released the following September, and it was. The band went to tour Europe for a run of dates. However, Wind Waker guitarist Jesse Crofts would be filling in for Ryan Siu, who was dealing with ongoing health issues at the time. Not long after that, on June 20th, the band pulled out of the remaining tour dates, citing a, quote, serious personal crisis. Later, it was announced that their guitarist Ryan Siu had passed away the day before.
Wow.
No cause was ever officially announced. He posted on social media sometime before then. It was around New Year going into 2023, I believe. It looked like he was in a hospital bed, mentioning that he was starting the new year working on himself, and noted that he was off antidepressants and wasn't dealing with the constant brain fog and lethargy. So, 2023, the symptoms, the issues he's dealing with there's all sorts of ways you could speculate. They never really released the cause of death, and it's not worth speculating on. It's just a really tragic situation. He had joined the band when he was 15 years old. And 10, 11 years later, he's passed away. So just really, really sad, and kind of odd when you just kind of pick an album at random and you pick one that has this much kind of weight to it.
Yeah.
The band, after lengthy discussions with Siu's family, decided to release the album and go forward with the tour in honor of Ryan, pointing out that this was the last set of complete songs that they had written with him. And the meaning of the songs and the love that they had for him hadn't changed, so why not move forward? Musically speaking, there's absolutely no denying these guys are really, really good. They kind of ride that line of maybe having too much harsh vocals over clean vocals, but both the singers do a really good job, and it works with the sound that they're producing, so I can't really fault them for it. They're definitely a band that if you're at Sonic Temple and you need something to do there, kind of later in the Stage 3 sets, I would definitely check these guys out. Standout tracks on the album include Nightmare, Overflow, Inhumane, Dissipate, and Aftertouch. They got a crap ton of listens on YouTube Music, so they're clearly doing really well. And you're glad to see it. Any band that emphasizes musicianship, like they've released instrumental versions of all their albums. That's clearly a big focus for them. But I just hope that they continue to see success, and just kind of an interesting story.
Yeah, for sure. I always hate to hear when band has to overcome something like that, and they lose a band member so young. And we talk all the time about what's wrong with American rock, and the first thing that came to mind when you were telling that story is, what high school has a battle of the bands in the United States?
I hope some of them still do, but you never hear about it.
Like, that should be a staple everywhere, because if you want people to grow up around music, I mean, that there should be that. Like, I feel like we're missing out on those opportunities.
I think in our old school, the only battle of the bands is like some sort of slap fight that would occur on the bleachers behind one of the end zones on a Friday night. It's not quite the battle of the bands you're looking for.
I was going to say something else, but we don't want to potentially open ourselves up to some sort of slanderous lawsuit about the activity of previous band directors involving student members. But yeah,
allegedly,
allegedly that's a different kind of battle that they were fighting. But I think that is that's a great way to bring music into schools, and I'm a huge backer of music in schools. As much as I do give our marching band a hard time, and sometimes
they just need better music in schools.
Yes, 100%. Well, if you had rock bands, like, you would have better music in schools, but. Yeah, for sure. I think that would be something that would really boost.
Not to jump too far off topic, but I remember the one Bay Area thrash documentary that was uploaded to YouTube a while back. At least I think I watched it on YouTube. And even those dudes were talking about playing guitar in high school, and it's just why did we deviate from that?
Yeah.
If there's any money at all to throw anywhere, let's throw it into that.
Yep, I 100% agree to that. So, but anyway, check out Polaris, a band I was not familiar with till today, so I may have to give their stuff a listen to check it out. I am running through 2 Vault gimmicks as well. Every other week, I am checking out all of the albums from the band Journey, which has been very interesting. It turns out they were a progressive rock band at the start, and I have listened to their first 2 albums, and if you're a fan of prog rock, you're going to really like those albums, even if you're not a fan of the big hits of the 80s. In fact, I would say specifically if you're not a fan of their big hits in the 80s. And I've got one more of those prog albums to go through next week when we get to their 3rd album. It's the last pre-Steve Perry Journey album. So looking forward to that. That'll be coming up next week. But in every other week, I am going through the years as well. But I am going through the list of one-hit wonders on Wikipedia and finding a song that I know or a band that I'm familiar with, and listening to the whole album and trying to decide whether it should have been the one hit that actually hit for this band, whether they should have been a one-hit wonder. Last week I checked out, or 2 weeks ago, I checked out Steam because of 1969's Na Na Hey Hey Kiss 'Em Goodbye. Clearly that was the one hit they had, so much so that the album had 6 other songs that tried to use the same music. So don't ever think I'll ever go back and listen to that album again. Can't say the same for this week's 1970, the song that was on so many of the infomercials about music from the 70s, and that's probably the first place I ever heard this song. The song in question is Mississippi Queen by the band Mountain. They released an album in 1970 to support that. It was called Climbing, as you can see the image on the screen, apropos from these guys. Let's go through the band real quick. Leslie West is on guitars on all tracks and vocals. Felix Papalardi on bass guitar, also piano, also rhythm guitar, also did vocals. He also did production. Steve Knight was on organ on 4 tracks, Mellotron on 2 tracks, and the handbells on track number 4. And Corky Lang, drums on all tracks except 6 and 7, did percussion on tracks 7 and 9. The album reached number 17 on the Billboard US 200 and number 19 on Canada's top albums and CDs. The track Mississippi Queen reached number 21 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1970. It's clearly a single on the track, but I can definitively tell you that this band is far too good to be a one-hit wonder. I think if you're a fan of Southern rock, Some of it does kind of get into the maybe stoner rock. I think you're really going to like these guys. And you've probably, if you're a fan of hip hop in any way, which I admit that maybe my knowledge and expertise not as strong there, but you've probably heard some of their work. And I'm not just talking about Mississippi Queen. It turns out the beginning of the live recording of the song Long Red, which was actually a Leslie West song that he then did live with Mountain, has become one of the most sampled drum breaks in hip hop, sampled over 700 songs by artists such as EPMD, Pete Rock, and CL Smooth, A Tribe Called Quest, Nas, Kanye West, The Game, and many others. Songs using the sample include Jay-Z's 99 Problems and Kanye West's The Glory. If you go listen to it, there's a good chance it does sound like something you've probably heard somewhere in music before. It is very interesting. Mississippi Queen, critics love this song. Appears at number 10 on the 1995 list of the 50 heaviest riffs of all time by Guitar Magazine. Author Scott R. Bernard describes the song as an enduring anthem with a guitar riff that sounded like a carnivore choking on dinner. The song is ranked number 230 in the top 500 heavy metal songs of all time by biographer Martin Popoff. It also appears at number 10 on the Ultimate Classic Rock 2011 list of the top 10 Southern rock songs. Spin Magazine designed it as the cowbell jam to end all cowbell jams. Mountain are to the cowbell what Dostoevsky is to the Russian novel, naming it one of the 2004 list of the 15 greatest cowbell songs of all time. It's a mix of Southern rock, stoner rock, even a little early progressive rock, especially the last track on the album. Overall, the album's great. It shouldn't be a one-hit wonder band. These guys should have had a bunch of hits. Don't really know why. The band kind of went through some twists and turns. One of the band members was killed by his wife. They ended up the band continued on in various forms and fashions up until like the mid 2000s, when they finally kind of stopped. Some more members passed away. But these guys were, toured with a lot of the big bands. If you check out their Wikipedia page, you'll see, they were certainly influencing a lot of the bands that you probably like from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and even later. But I recommend this album wholeheartedly. They got the track right, but it should not have been the only hit that this band had. Standout tracks on this album, obviously Mississippi Queen, but also Never in My Life, For Yasgur's Farm, and Sitting on a Rainbow. I can't tell you anything other than you should check this out, and you'll realize that these guys were incredibly talented. The musicianship is really high quality. It's a shame for whatever reason that they didn't have more hits and didn't have more commercial success, but these guys, this is exactly why I wanted to do this gimmick, was to find something like this where it's a band that absolutely, for whatever reason, the system at the time, the record labels, just didn't let these guys have the success they should have had, and like I said, I really dug it. But it does feel like, unfortunately, that's the way, especially in the older days, that's the way the music industry worked.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, kind of with my own old school gimmick, finding stuff that it's like, man, I wish I would have discovered this sooner. When I'm looking up these bands, I always like to look at the personnel to see if there's anyone's name that person, okay, cool. And I did see and learned that Bud Prager managed the band, and his name's familiar to me because he also managed Megadeth from 1995 to 2001, like the Cryptic Writings, Risk era Megadeth, and I think was kind of the scapegoat in some ways after Risk did what it did, but he also managed Bad Company, Foreigner as well, so he was kind of a big deal.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it's just, you don't know why in the old days, especially, why does this band not make it, so to speak, and another band make it? I mean, we've read the stories. We talked a little bit about on the podcast how a band like Rush got their first single into a radio station, and basically got a radio station, I believe, in Cleveland to play. It was a Working Man, I think.
I think so.
And that was basically how they hit, because it just caught on in Cleveland with those listeners, and then somehow it just kind of trickled out from there, and all of a sudden they made it. Like, why that didn't happen for these guys, I don't know. And I'm not comparing these guys to Rush because it's apples and oranges, but it's a fascinating thing about the music industry. We talk all the time about today how hard it is to hit, but it was really hard in the 70s as well. It's just, a lot of bands like this, for whatever reason, kind of fell through the cracks, and it's kind of cool to go back and kind of find those bands now and say, you know what? it kind of sucks that these guys got labeled as a one-hit wonder when they were just very musically gifted, and it should have never been that way.
Well, I think you've realized now that the music industry has wronged people long before hair metal was maligned in the early 90s. The Rush example's funny, though, because it's like they got radio play with Workin' Man and then like proceeded to write nothing else like that. It just evolved into a band so far removed from that. Are these guys trying to act like Zeppelin? Like, what is this? What are they shooting for here?
It is funny because that probably if they would have brought 2112 to that same radio station, they would have never got on the air.
No.
Unless they needed to, because DJs had to have that one song that if you had to go take the restroom break, you put that one on, like an 8-minute song, and then you could go to the restroom and get back before it was over, back in the record days. But they picked a song that was it probably isn't a 3 or 4 minute song at most. It's very radio friendly,
very hard rock, just of the era. Like,
it feels like a song that would be big in a steel town. Like Cleveland and Pittsburgh and the Working Man, it's kind of funny, but just a offshoot there. But yeah, Mountain, I would love to listen to more of their stuff. They did release some more albums, even releasing albums as far as into the 2000s before they finally called it quits. But excited to continue on with this gimmick. Mike and I were looking at the list of one-hit wonders. The 80s are going to be tough because, man, we could probably pick 5 albums every year for the 80s. We'll figure that out when we get there, but still a lot of good stuff to get to through the 70s before we get to whatever the one-hit wonders look like in the 80s, so it should be interesting to see. But that is going to wrap things up for this edition of the Hard Rock Empire. So glad you joined us for another week of the best hard rock and heavy metal. We'll be back with you again next Sunday, probably earlier, probably like 2 o'clock Eastern time on next Sunday. Music of March the 27th coming up next week. Looking forward to that, so please join us. Huge thanks to everybody who joined us in the chat and everybody that chatted tonight. It was really awesome to have everybody chiming in. That makes our program so much better. We really appreciate that. Of course, big thanks to Chris, as always, for kind of getting everybody together on the podcast in the chat room and kind of keeping things rolling there. Big thanks to Mike, as always, for his hard work on this podcast. Big thanks to Stove Lake Media for their continued support of the podcast, and a big thanks to you for listening whenever and wherever you are listening. We'll be back with you again next Sunday for another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. Until then, don't forget to join the Empire, the Hard Rock Empire.